Welcome 8th graders. For today's lecture, we'll talk about the problems of adolescence. Will be the continuation for last week's class. I hope you guys have reviewed your chapter, and I also hope you guys had a wonderful week. So let's begin. Lesson 19, the problems of adolescence. For today's lecture, we'll start with an introduction as usual, then talk about certain specialities of adolescence. Last week's lecture, we spoke about the social issues that teens struggle with, but we spoke about depression, friendship, and friendship with ideological politics. This week's lecture, we'll talk about the use of intoxicants, excessive interest in audio-visual media, and sexual attraction. And then finally, we'll end with a remedy for these problems. For the introduction, it's the same as last week, but we covered that why infants are liked because they're innocent, they're modest, and their behaviors are very natural. But then we see that as they grow up, their bodies and minds go through a certain amount of change in terms of mental health, body, and intellectually. And so it is important for adolescents to manage their adolescent stage of life carefully in order to avoid unpleasant results throughout their life. The next slide is the same as last week as well, certain specialities of adolescence. But this slide states why, the purpose of this slide is for us to understand why are we learning about adolescence. It states the age period. From what age to what age does adolescence last? It lasts from 12 to 18 years, and one of the main reasons why we're learning this particular topic is because it's a transition from safe infancy to self-dependence. And so we see that if when adolescents try to ask for their freedom and for their power, when their adults oppose it or deny it, they usually they become even more rebellious and they act in negative ways. Now let's get to the main part. Social issues teens struggle with today. Use of intoxicants. Instigated by their friends, adolescents might start using intoxicants to imitate movie stars or a character in a book. They might start with casual drinking and get addicted to it. Many of the addicting behaviors, such as smoking, drinking, and drug abuse, are very hard to stop once they are started during adolescence. These addictive behaviors destroy a person's health, their personality, and family life. The adolescent must understand the consequences of their bad friendships that could destroy their whole life. When talking about intoxicants, marijuana is always a conversation starter. Let's talk about drug use. According to recent studies, about 6% of seniors in high school reported using marijuana daily. Marijuana use exceeds cigarette use in teens now. In fact, many teens believe marijuana is less harmful than in years past. I'm very sure all of us have heard this particular statement in some or the other way, shape, or form. This new perception may be due to the changing laws surrounding marijuana. Meanwhile, other illicit drug use has held steadily at the lowest levels, according to the Monitoring the Future survey published by the National Institution on Drug Abuse. Teen use of illicit drugs recently is the lowest since the study began in 1975. Now let's talk about alcohol use. The alcohol use and binge drinking showed a significant decline amongst teenagers. Despite the decline, 29.3% of high school seniors still report drinking alcohol. Underage drinking can take a serious toll on a teenager's developing brain. Drug use preventing solutions. The parents must have regular conversations with their teens about the dangers of drugs and dangers of prescription drugs. Many teens do not recognize the dangers of taking a friend's prescription or popping a few pills that are not prescribed to them. Signs in home. It's never easy for a parent to learn that their teen is using drugs, but it is important for them to be aware of the warning signs of drug use, especially at home. The most subtle signs involve changes in behavior, rather than physical signs like drug odors and bloodshot eyes, which kids find creative ways of hiding. Here are some things that could indicate that the teen is using drugs. Loses interest in family activities, disrespects family members and family rules, withdraws from responsibilities, abuses others emotionally, verbally, or physically, displays a sudden increase or decrease in appetite. loses valuable items or money, starts breaking curfew or sneaking out of the house, refuses to tell the parents where they are going, gives excuses for bad behavior, spends a lot of time in their room, lies about the activities, hides drug-related items in their pockets or their room, including cigarette, rolling papers, pipes, roach clips, small glass wheels, plastic baggies, seeds, powders, and more. Other signs of potential drug use includes missing money, prescription drugs, or even spoons from home. If the teen smells like incense, uses eye drops, chews gums, or eats breath mints more frequently, these things could also be sign of drug use. Signs at school. Almost always, changes in school performance indicates that there is some type of problem brewing within teens. Sometimes the changes are due to bullying or mental health issues like depression or anxiety. But these signs could also indicate that the teen is using drugs. Here's an overview of the most common school-related signs of drug use. Experiences a sudden drop in grades. Starts being truant from school or late to school. Loses interest in learning. Sleeps in class. Displays poor work performance. Refuses or forgets to complete homework. Defies authority and breaks rules. Displays a poor attitude towards sports or other extracurricular activities. Struggles to remember things or has a short attention span. Fails to inform parents of teacher meetings, open houses, and etc. Physical and emotional signs. When it comes to the emotional signs of drug use, it's easy to miss the warning signs because teens tend to be moody and irritable. It's common for their friends group to change too, but sometimes this can signal that they are headed towards the wrong path. In fact, a change in friend groups is one of the first signs of drug use. Here's an overview of the most common physical and emotional signs of drug use. Changes friends or starts hanging out with a new crowd. Smells like alcohol or marijuana on the breath or body. Displays mood swings and erratic behavior. Tends to be negative, argumentative, paranoid, confused, destructive, or anxious. Overreacts to criticism and acts rebellious. Shares few, if any, details about their personal life. Seems overly tired or hyperactive. Experiences a drastic weight loss or weight gain. Appears unhappy and depressed. Cheats, steals, or engages in other criminal activities. Needs money all the time or has excessive amounts of money. Looks sloppy and has poor hygiene. That was about intoxicants. Now let's talk about excessive interest in audio-visual media. Adolescents are attracted to movies, televisions, serials, sports, concerts, playing video games. They approach these activities led by emotions alone, not by discretion. Adolescents' attention to studies and responsibilities will diminish and spoil their good future with excessive interest in audio-visual media. The audio-visual media should be approached with great care. It should be used to gain knowledge and recreation, but not cause their ruin. Is social media. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter can be great ways for teens to connect with one another, but social media can be problematic for several reasons. For instance, social media can expose your teen to cyberbullying, slut-shaming, and so much more. And while there are some benefits to social media, there are a lot of risks involved as well. Social media can have a negative impact on friendships and is changing the way teens date. It can even impact their mental health. But no matter what precautions you take, teens are still likely to be exposed to unsavory people, unhealthy images, and sexual content online. While there are measures being put into place to reduce the risks kids face online, it is important for parents to get involved. A topic that makes everyone uncomfortable: sexual attraction. God created animals, birds, and human beings, both male and female. A mutual attraction and liking between male and female is a strong quality that nature itself has nurtured in living beings. Sexuality is the great gift that God has given to mankind, for male and female, to love and to live together. Infants and children play together without discriminating between males and females. Adolescents start to show special liking and interest towards the opposite sex. Mutual liking and love between man and woman become meaningful in married life and family life. The liking among adolescents is merely emotional, and the love they feel is transient. Only when they mature as adults can they form a loving relationship that can last a lifetime. Attraction between adolescents is natural. However, it is important not to fall into grave mistakes. If interest towards someone continuously disturbs the mind, the adolescent should talk to their parent, priest, or the religious leaders for advice. Sexual activity. Based on the recent youth risk behavior surveillance data, 39.5% of high school students reported being sexually active. That means sexual activity had declined slightly over the past decade. Fortunately, the teen birth rate has declined over the past decade as well. Births to teen age 15 to 19 accounted for 5.0% of all births in recent studies. The decline in pregnancy doesn't necessarily mean teens are using protection. However, of the 20 million new sexually transmitted diseases each year, more than half were among young people between the ages of 15 and 24. Parents may not be aware that their child is sexually active. However, parents need to talk to their teens about sex, even if they don't think their child is engaging in sexual activity. It is important for parents to have the talk with their kids. There are a few things that children need to know about sexual activity during the teen years. Some of these things include: you can get pregnant the first time you have sex. Withdrawal isn't effective in preventing pregnancy. More than half of all high school students have not had sex. According to one survey, 2/3 of teens who have had sex wished they would have waited. The CDC has found that 1 in 4 teenage girls has had a sexually transmitted disease. Knowing some of these facts and statistics will help the teens understand the risks of sexual activity. It is important to note that discussing birth control and STD prevention with you does not mean you are encouraging to have sex. Studies show that teens that have access to accurate information about sex tend to delay or reduce their own sexual behavior, particularly high-risk behavior. We have discussed this particular slide in the previous lecture as well, talking about the remedy for these problems, which include reading the Holy Scripture, family prayer, going to confessions on a regular basis, participating in the Holy Kurbono, learning Catechism, and doing virtuous deeds. These are some of the remedies that will help you devote more time towards God and prayer, and less times towards activities that will put you in trouble and ruin you. Let's memorize. Luke chapter 2, verses 52. Jesus increased in wisdom and in years and in divine and in human favors. Questions. Why is adolescence said to be the period of problems? Explain some characteristics of adolescence. How can intoxicants destroy a person's whole life? How can an excessive interest in audio-visual media be harmful to adolescents? Why is it important not to take an attraction during adolescence seriously? Write down the challenges that you face in your age on a day-to-day basis, whether big or small. Make sure to write it in detail and explain as much as possible. That's all we have for today for Sunday school. Don't forget to go back and review your lesson, answer the questions, and most importantly, memorize your Bible verse. I hope you have a blessed and wonderful week ahead.